raise the issue, are synthetic or lab-grown diamonds an ethical solution? And I don't mean it in a negative way or just being controversial for the sake of being controversial. If I speak to some of the woke people that I know, and I do have some friends that are woke. I don't know if they're guys or not, but they're there. And the question starts to become, well, you don't need diamonds. No one's going to die without a diamond. Maybe a digger, that'll make money, but what the hell? What do we need them? Let's just make synthetics and not deal with all these environmental and then we'll find some other work for the diggers. Maybe we'll eventually train them to be, programmers or Marcom people or whatever. But thinking long term it's I know that I'm not a big fan of, but forget about me. Look about the industry. Is our synthetic diamonds a realistic kind of a solution or an alternative relative to some of the problems that Farai might bring up or other people might bring up? And should we consider that? I'm sure that we have someone here who'll talk positively about that, but I want to debate that point. I want a discussion about it. And we have natural, I don't mean to make it like a fight. It's not a fight. No. Forget about the diamonds. Just think about the people. Think about the digger in Africa, the one making a living who's doing well, and the women who are earning more money. Think about the digger in Zimbabwe who's starving and goes into a field to dig for diamonds and gets dogs sicked on him, okay? And think about the Indian manufacturer who looks at some friend of his who bribes a minister, buys the diamonds 30% cheaper, and then sells them and competes against legitimate diamond OECD companies who can't bribe people. So, what is the deal with these synthetic diamonds? Are they in fact a better social responsible product? And how does that change the dynamic? Clearly 10 years ago, we didn't have this. So there's an opportunity here because of this challenge. And one of the things wake up, come on, natural diamond guys, wake up, you got the synthetic guys competing with you. That's gonna wake you up. So what is the social responsibility story relative between lab grown, they like to call it synthetic, I like to call it, or natural diamonds? What's the game there? What should the industry,
I mean, I think there's a few things. First, if you believe that diamonds, there's no more diamonds almost left in the world, then you have to figure out a solution anyway, right? If it's true that there's no more major diamond mines, you're just a matter of time before, mine diamonds go away. So you have to think of a solution if you're talking about Africa and all these other places. If you actually believe that that is the case, then a solution has to be found anyway, right? Because the nature of, depleting a natural resources, it does eventually run out, right? And that is the benefit that lab-grown diamonds do have. If you have a vertically integrated supply chain as well, then you also know the provenance and you can track and the traceability throughout your entire chain. Not everybody necessarily has that. Are all lab-grown diamonds created equally? No, not all diamond companies, miners, nothing. You can't say that across the board. Can it be a better solution? If you just base it on, are you depleting a natural resource? Of course, then yes, it is definitely more sustainable. If you believe that natural resource is running out, it's more sustainable if you want to preserve it. If you talk about, are all companies practicing the best social responsibility and sustainability practices that are lab grown? I'm not going to say that they do. So, I'm not going to claim, that moral authority in that sort of way. But I do think that the industry has to think about how do we coexist. In general, the messaging for the consumer, a lot of consumers heard diamonds bad and started to look to other products. And if we keep that rhetoric, diamonds bad, out there and trying to point out and say, oh, well, lab grown is no better, then you just drive consumers in a different direction. So I do think that we have to, think about that. When we go around, beating each other up, people just remember they hear something bad. They don't remember, all the particulars to it. So if you create bad, no matter how you're doing it, you're hurting the overall industry. So, in terms of like a preservation of the industry, I do think we have to think about that with messaging. I do think that in general, with the greenhouse goals, the Paris climate goals, we have to figure those issues out too. I mean, right now we are experiencing record climate events around the globe and the heating of the globe. You know, every single industry and all the, obviously the traditional industries that are, you know, emissions intensive, which obviously mining operations are, has to figure out if they're going to continue mining, how they do it more sustainably. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, people always talk about, I mean, when you talk about becoming carbon neutral, I mean, the issue there is that you have to, it's virtually impossible in today's world to be completely carbon neutral without having offsets, right? Because you have transportation, your products gets and that's the sector that generates the most greenhouse gases. So we have to really think creatively of how do you take the emissions out of diamonds in general. And I think obviously lab grown create an interesting opportunity there. In some countries, fossil fuels are, you know, are heavily utilized to create lab grown diamonds. So that's not the solution to have fossil fuels creating those diamonds. But I do think that the larger industry has to figure out how do we meet those goals, and how do we, if we want the industry to survive, how do we message it in a way and behave in a way that allows preservation of the industry. And so I think that there is a bright future. We are seeing it obviously with lab growns, the growth that the younger generation, we're direct to consumer, people are finding us, and they're finding all the companies doing that because people do care and it matters. And so when people hear ExxonMobil talk about, and obviously they got exposed for, you know, some of the practices they were doing around climate change and trying to pretend that they were supportive, but really kind of distract the conversation. People want real accountability. They want to see that you're not saying it just because the world is saying it and now everyone else is doing it, but that you actually mean it and that you are doing those practices. And so I think when we're having the conversation about standards and things, it is really about, are people doing what they say they're doing? Are they producing nice, beautiful reports? And can people really see that difference? I also want to go back to something that Farai said. I mean, all the companies, especially the mining companies, have immense political power. And I think when people think about their political power and advocacy, they're always advocating for their own interests specifically. But what about advocating around the standards and supporting, you know, like if the government is in a particular country is advocating in a particular way that's unethical, not going there. Say you won't go there. Put your might behind supporting, advocating for your entire supply chain, not just for your specific business interest. I mean, I think that's what it also has to be about, because companies do have incredible power and leverage. And the reason that things got out of control is that companies they wanted to do business and at any cost, and they weren't willing to sacrifice those opportunities to press for better outcomes. And I think the onus is on the industry to use your advocacy might, not just to make sure that you get a great tax break, but that you are making sure that there's capacity, that there is good educational systems so people have opportunities and they can read and all those other things. I think, you know, we talk about people having jobs, but as we mentioned earlier, I think by Toby, the issue of climate change, which we were talking about, makes agricultural not a viable solution. So are we capacity building? I think everyone's talked about capacity building. And if the diamond industry is not capacity building for how people transition in the future, you know, that is not sustainable, right? So I think those are the things we have to be talking about. And I think it's a lot easier to say, oh, this is good or this is bad, or they actually use this energy or not. But I think it really is like, how is the industry sustainable for the people that are participating in it? It isn't today.
That's important. And I think that, look, I think the catalyst that we're seeing from synthetic diamonds is very positive in many ways. I mean, I talked to a manufacturer in India who said, I can keep my workers busy with synthetic diamonds. I'm no longer captured by the site holder system. But Stephen and De Beers have done a tremendous amount of positive work in Botswana. Stephen, are we losing the battle of legitimacy to synthetic diamonds from the natural diamond perspective? I know that's a funny question to ask Stephen, but you know, I'd really like to know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'd like to talk about this one because
I can't hear you, Stephen. You need to go off of Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think that it's interesting. I think there's much that Gwyneth says that I agree with. The most important one of which is it's a major mistake for our industry to think that we should, on these particular issues of positive impact, that we should be comparing the two products. I mean, it's totally like comparing apples and oranges. If you look at let's take Botswana. Botswana is the world's leading producer. We've talked a lot about artisanals. Let's talk about where the diamonds really come from. They come from Botswana, they come from South Africa, Namibia, Russia, and Canada. The positive impact that they make in those countries is extraordinary. And it's very easy to identify the problem areas in the same way that I'm sure Gwyneth would agree that, it's very difficult to speak for an entire category because with synthetics coming largely and increasingly from China, we know that, the story is different than that which, when it comes to energy source than Diamond Foundry can do in California. It's there, that's apples and oranges. But if we look at the real positive impact, it's different, but it's extraordinarily large. And, in some ways, one could make a really strong argument that the transfer of wealth from the developed world, the world's wealthy consumers, to the developing world, diamonds may well be the largest transfer of wealth. And Botswana may be the most extraordinary story. And, and let's talk about capability. It is huge development of skill sets in a place like Botswana, where the revenues from diamonds are used to build schools and hospitals and educate women in stem cells. I mean, the stories, I won't go into it in the detail, but it's unbelievably powerful and unbelievably persuasive. And where I think it's a mistake in our dialogue is if we start trying to compete on these points. They're dramatically different. And and if the diamond industry, the natural diamond industry were harmed, that would have enormous negative effect on people in huge numbers and in huge volumes who have very good lives today in Botswana as a result. So I'm very conscious that it's a mistake to engage in this one versus the other story. It's better off to put forward the positive impact that you have, and we meet different consumers' needs in different ways. And we'd be much more effective if we focused on telling our positive impact story than arguing over CO2 emissions from what are often radically different environments around the world. I'm more positive, I guess, about the future of natural diamonds because I think our story is so compelling. The challenge is telling it effectively. And I think if there's been a wake-up call, Martin, I agree with you, is how we tell it. In its reality, it's extraordinarily positive thing. And telling it is a challenge, and we need to do that. I think we need to do that much more effectively. And if we get spurred on by synthetics, well, then that's not a bad thing. But the most important thing, I think, is to get out of this comparative story and to really focus on telling our positive story. I believe in it. At De Beers, we're bringing more initiatives to make that easier. We introduced this concept of the code of origin where we could commit it over time to identifying the source of our diamonds much more broadly than we do today, and linking that to the building forever commitments. And when we talk about things like really powerful commitments to improve people's lives and to make a positive impact in the environment, the De Beers 2030 commitments, which include things like being carbon neutral, and we know how to do it. We know how to get there, and we will get there in the time frame that we commit to. So, the future, we should be very positive about the natural diamond story in this environment, as long as we really effectively can tell the story. And that's where I think De Beers can help. I think De Beers can help retail jewelers across America to provide them with the tools that make it easy for them to do so. And we'll do that through De Beers, and then with our work with other producers like Alrosa, through the Natural Diamond Council, we'll do it with David Kelly and his team. But the market's big enough for all of us, and we should focus on our positives. And I wouldn't worry too much, Gwyneth. We're not going to run out of diamonds for a very, very long time, and I suspect by then our technology will help us find more. So I think we'll be around for a while.
All right. So the market's big enough for all of us. How do you like that, Gwendolyn?
True, right? I mean, of course, I laugh because the whole story about scarcity is kind of one of the things that's often, promoted in the Mine Diamond space. If, the point is this: consumers will choose, and I think it's really about quality. I mean, the competition in the market is, if you're at the top higher level quality level, then you're competing against each other, and there are people at the lower end who all compete against each other. In terms of where the future goes and where things go in the future, I think as lab grown technology gets better, right, you are going to see better quality like what Diamond Foundry is producing in that space. And so again, then you're going to be competing on that quality and that clarity. You're not competing on lab grown versus mined. And so I think that's where things are going. Our biggest sector is the bridal business, right? For both millennials and Gen Z who are digital natives, so they find everything on the internet and they find all their research there. They like the idea that something is vertically integrated and they know the provenance, but they also like the price, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody would like a deal. I have a friend who's a billionaire who said to me, "Can you guys produce a 10-carat diamond for me?" She can buy anything she wants. I mean, she's a billionaire, but why wouldn't she want to have a lesser expensive large diamond? Right? It's like, if she can get a 10-carat diamond for a fraction of the cost of mine. So I think, again, it is a big market, and I think that we shouldn't be fearful. And to those people who are really wedded to the idea that it has to come from the earth, there'll be always a market for those people.
My only concern here is with the value question. Are diamonds about value? Or,
well, I mean,
why not just buy something at, I guess, Swarovski?
Most people don't. I mean, what's really interesting is the large percentage of people are buried with their rings, right? You think about why graveyards are robbed, right? You talk about these valuable diamonds, and people bury their families with them. It goes back to King Tut and burying jewels, right? When people get engaged, there's a sentiment from the person that gave it to you. Yes, when women talk, I mean, and I'm a woman, and usually everyone in the diamond world as men are talking, but women, when we talk, we're like, "Oh my God, did you see her rock and how it sparkled? That's so big. I wonder how many carats it is in the sparkle." That's all people care about, right? A lot of women are like, "I want something that's large and sparkles well. I want it to be pretty clear. And when people see them see my diamond to sparkle." I mean, that is really where the conversation often doesn't go. I think that people forget that diamonds aren't bought, they can be an investment, but they're only a valuable investment if something is really unique and rare about it. If you go to a pawn shop where most people actually liquidate their engagement rings and diamond jewelry, it's not on the high-end consignment market. Most people are going to pawn shop type places. You certainly aren't getting anything close to what you paid for it. I mean, no one gets what they paid for it unless you were talking about the Hope diamond or something that's very rare and very unique. So this idea of value is most of the value attached to a diamond is sentimental. I mean, the SEC and others will have conversation with you if you want to say that, a diamond has a specific market value, because that market value changes. And if mined diamonds indeed become more scarce, then there's going to be market value from scarcity, of course. But I think that the value, I mean, I'm not really sure what, I feel like there's so much placed on that, and I don't know that the average consumer, that is the reason that they're buying diamonds. And I think that message gets lost in an industry that's really thinking about the top end of the market, but that's not the majority of the market.
Interesting. Please. Yeah.
So, there's many people in the industry I haven't met yet. As you know, I'm fairly new to the industry, and I came from the fashion industry. So I just want to, if we finish at 4:00 and we all want to feel a bit better about ourselves, then maybe I can tell you. We are way far ahead of the fashion industry in terms of what we do, what we give back, and even these discussions that we're having as an industry have only just started to happen in the fashion industry. So whilst there is a lot of work still to do, and I applaud you for pulling everyone together and all of these very healthy discussions, the knowledge that the NGOs have that I'm nowhere close to even understanding, so I appreciate that as well. But as an industry, we're far ahead of many other industries. Do you know what's in your phone? Do you know where your phone was produced? What happened to people's lives who produced the phone? We don't ask that question. Let's be absolutely honest on that. So I think as an industry, we work together as an industry very well, and I think we should be applauded for that. But what I should also say is that we live or die as an industry. We're an unusual industry. You go into a grocery store, probably what's in your shopping basket is branded. And yet 70 to 80% of diamond jewelry is not branded in the true sense of it being a brand with values. Therefore, we as an industry are a brand. And clearly that's my role at the Natural Diamond Council. And as part of that, it's very important to think collectively, because if we think individually and competitively, then we are not going to succeed. And we have not succeeded over the last 10 years. And I think what's really important to know, and I think David mentioned it earlier on, relative to the luxury industry, we have way underperformed the luxury industry because too much of our time has been spent on internal supply chain discussions. We are a consumer luxury. We're not a commodity business. And yet so often we behave as a commodity business. Personally, I feel very strongly about the RJC and what they bring to the table. We are going to be working very closely, to your point, Gwyneth, about how do we raise the awareness of the RJC in terms of the consumer can make an educated choice. But what's important is that we all take ownership of our own areas. And if I can give you an example, I won't name names. I spoke to someone somewhere in the world who looked after a conglomerate of retailers. And I said to them, so what are your sustainability values? And they were very proud that all of their members insist that their suppliers are all members of the RJC. And I said to them, so are your members members of the RJC? They said, no, we don't have the time for that. We don't have the resource, etc. And I was very direct. I said, look, that is completely unacceptable. And if that's your philosophy, then I'm sorry, this phone call is going to be quite short, because we as an industry have either got to work together and pull together, identify the challenges and bring those there. And if we do that, we'll be successful together. I think the great thing about the marketplace at the moment is that whether you're Cartier, whether you're Tiffany, whether you're Signet, whether you're a local jeweler, you're having a good time at the moment. So it's not about one is doing better than the other. It's about we all build this together. And if anyone doesn't believe that sustainability is going to be core to consumer values in the future from now growing and growing, then please, I'd love to have a discussion with you, because, I spend my life, looking at consumer behavior, speaking with the press, etc. And this thing is coming like a steam train at us. And so we don't have time today, but I'm happy to have that discussion with anyone who's not too sure whether this is going to impact the consumer or not.
Thank you. That's really important. And I think that it's positive to say that our industry is in fact addressing issues ahead of other industries, maybe the luxury sector, and that we are sensitive to the social responsibility issues in an acceptable fashion. We got to do more. Someone else wanted to talk online. First of all, Josh, anybody? Was someone here in the audience that was jumping up and down? Sure.
Diamonds are dying.
David, and
We've lost our shine. We've lost the story that we can tell the people. And we need to add value to our products. People have value. These are people mining a stone, putting it back into the communities. I think De Beers has got an idea too. I mean, I'm not just for just strictly artisanal. I'm about what's ethically right for people, for our communities, for our livelihood of the most jobs that we can create, and a story that the people feel that we are ethical, that we are trying to do the job that's best. I mean, we got this electric thing. They don't say tomorrow we're all going to be electric. We're not going to overnight. This young man up here was talking about, it's a grassroots. You got to start somewhere. You got to start and do something about and make change, because the people are making the changes for us, and we're not going in the right direction. We're dying. We're dying to the internet. I'm losing sales to the internet because they don't have to pay sales tax. I met their price, but I had to pay sales tax. I'm having to do the ethical right thing. We are struggling our business is growing. We rocked through this time. I rocked through 2008, 2009. Our business is growing. But there's people that are dying. There's miners that are not being taken care of. And our customers not getting taken care of because they're just buying what they think is ethically correct. But there's other choices. And I think that emotional choice of giving to your bride something special. I mean, we work hard. It's a sacrifice. If you go back to the 50s, most of us can't go back to that. But if you talk to your grandparents, your parents, they went out and spent an outrageous amount of dollars on a gold chain, a gold ring, just a little ring with a little tiny diamond. They spent months of salary. As we talked about the 2 months salary, they made sacrifice for that woman. They made a sacrifice. We're not making that sacrifice. We're all based upon price anymore. We're all based upon the number. Well, I had a nice steak dinner last night and I didn't buy it on price. I bought it on the service that I got, the quality of the meat. It was the best. And you forget price real quickly when you've gotten everything else. There's three things. When I first did a business card 50 years ago, I had three things. On there was price speaks loud, quality speaks louder, service speaks the loudest. You forget the damn price down the road when you've been given that quality of an experience and service, something they can be proud of and remember. We're losing that experience. We're McDonaldizing the United States. Everything is quick in the door. Just push a few buttons. They come in the store. Don't you love it when they come into your store and all they're doing is on their computer the whole time? SI1, G color, got this fluorescence. He's got all this crap. He's got all these numbers and he's into the computer. He's got the exact diamond you did, right? You went through how many hundreds of one particular grade? Like I spent all day and all week looking at diamonds. To select for you, why am I doing this for you when you can go on the internet? You're smarter than I am. Why are you going out there buying it for me? We're the experts. That's why they're coming to us. But you know what? We're giving them all that time, all that information, and they're thinking that they're getting that same stone. They just cut you out. We've got to get back into the picture. We've got to get back into the picture with a story. We got to get back into the picture that we're people that you want to do business with, you're proud of. You take that story home. You can't tell any story about that internet purchase you made, but you can sure talk about that steakhouse you went to. And you know, we've lost it. We have to get the emotion. We have to get that fire back in there. And you know what? Price is forgotten. But we got to be reasonable too. We can't be nuts on our price. You're not going to charge $500 on a McDonald's burger. I don't care how hungry you are, unless you're really hungry and got lots of money, you're going to eventually break down. But if you're reasonable, you've done your research and you have stories to tell, you are adding value, you are adding value, and you are adding value. We've got to get back to that. And I mean, everybody has something here that's been important to say. I know we all have industries, every industry, whether it's my industry, our industry, your industry, we're all working to sustain our people and to make it better for everyone, not just, I know we all have jobs, may have positions because this is what we do, but we gotta look at inside here. How do you feel about what you do? Is it really true that we are, I think we got to get off of this carbon deal because everything we do, we have an impact. And I mean, we're spending too much time on this environmental thing. Very important that we do to a point, but to carry it to the point of like, we're better than you because of, you know, we do less of this and more of that. We've got to make life worth living again. And we've got to make it right. So I don't know.
Well, beautifully spoken from the heart.